Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of For What It's Nerd. Today, we are here to discuss the newly released Wonka film, and I have a few thoughts, and most of them are generally quite good. To be fair, actually, um, what I will say is that this movie is a predictable kids movie, right? Which you kind of expect, right? It's aimed at kids to begin with, but it's just its plot isn't like super like crazy. It isn't anything like you wouldn't expect. It's got the general tropes of family and kind of fun and fanfare and kind of finding oneself and the general kind of, I don't want to say coming of age because it doesn't feel necessarily like that, but the general kind of vibe of that kind of thing within within the movie, right? And they do it quite well within that. It's a heartwarming story, and frankly, I did find myself really engaging with it in that way. At certain points, I felt very much the pull that the characters felt. I felt very much that kind of what's the word, like their um what's the word, like I felt their motivation strongly, like especially obviously Willy himself, Willy Wonka, and Noodle, the girl, obviously his companion, so to speak, in this. And funnily saying that, it does feel, I don't know whether this is just because I've kind of been watching more of those movies of late. It does feel very much like um those other prequel-esque movies that have been coming out in more recent times. The Cruella prequel, for example, it feels very similar to that. Even the reveals and the kind of the kind of caricature kind of villains and stuff like that. So I think this is kind of very much in the same market as a lot of those kind of prequel movies have been of late. Again, not to its detriment, and I think this is probably one of the better prequel-esque movies there have been. I think the only question now is that will raise for a lot of people, is this a separate universe to the other films? Because if so, there's a lot left open at the kind of end of this movie that you wonder how that would perhaps lead into the next ones if this was to link into the aforementioned movies. Obviously, I know there's two different versions of that kind of, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and then of course, I forget how the other one's titled, but you know what I mean. Um, is it Wonka? I forget how it's phrased, but anyway, the Johnny Depp version and the Gene Wilder version is what I'm trying to say. But I think what you'll find is that this is a pretty fun, riveting movie. In terms of its grandeur and even its musical numbers, despite the fact that I wasn't expecting quite a musical, which I probably should have going into a Willy Wonka film, a Willy Wonka-esque universe set film, if you want to call it. But yeah, it was fun. I think there's not much to say on this movie besides that. I think this is one of those movies that you shouldn't critique too much. I don't know if that's maybe harsh on this movie, because I don't think it's fair to say that it's not. It's a star-studded cast. There's good acting in it. There's a lot of empathy and pathos and care being put into this movie for sure. But I don't know if it's a movie that you would want to dissect infinitesimus. I can't say it. Tessimally. There we go. Infinitesimally. That's a fucking hard word. Sorry. Cussing. But yeah, I think there's a line in the show, actually. It's something in the movie. Sorry, that's like something akin to some things just don't need explanation. I think it's during the pure imagination number, and I think that's true of that universe in general, and also just the kind of the child, the child entertainment genre in general. Like sometimes it's just for fun. Sometimes things just happen for fun. Like there's you could be contrived about it. You could be like, oh, how does Willy Wonka not know the letter A when it's in his name on a chocolate bar he's had since he was a kid? And stuff like that. You could rip it to pieces like that, and I did during the movie. But I don't think that really aids in this movie. I think this movie is fun. I think it's, again, irreverent. I think it's boisterous. I think it's kind of unapologetic. It has, it has things that it wants to do, and it meets them. And All of the actors seem to be having a good time, even if their role's a smaller one. And it also just felt like a lot of actors were just like, yeah, why not be in this movie? Does that make sense? Like, I feel like Rowan Atkinson, for example, being in this movie wasn't really necessary at all. His part was small. It wasn't really anything like, like it wasn't a strong part, but like it was funny and it was entertaining. And I think that's just what this movie is in general. I think, to me at least, I don't know, because I felt like I thought I would come out with like more of an opinion either way on this movie, and I don't think I hated it. I don't think it's like suddenly my favorite thing ever. And like, as far as like movies from the genre go, as regards prequel-esque or sequel-esque, like kind of reboots of a franchise, it doesn't like pique my interest quite as much as, like, let's say one that really like stuck with me for a while afterwards was Mary Poppins Returns with Emily Blunt. I feel like that was a really good version of like of a new take on an old tale. I think this doesn't necessarily fulfill that kind of level of like, hey, let's create something different but the same kind of vibe, right? And I feel like maybe you could have went a little bit further with creating a more unique story as regards what happened. And I feel like it would be nicer if the chocolate itself was focused on a little bit more. But again, you're kind of pulling into something that isn't what the story is about. This story is kind of about finding one's place. I think it's about what constitutes a family, what constitutes it's about ideals, about where you're going in life and who you want to be with and why you're doing it together and all that type of stuff. And I think even though this movie isn't like, you know, super deep, I do think it has its moments, and I do think it's like there's some cool emotional beats. And I think I kind of want to really leave it there. I know this is like a really short review, but I think sometimes you just need to be short and sweet and straight to the point, and like, short and sweet, candy film. Sorry, couldn't help myself. But yeah, I think Timothée Chalamet did a really good job actually of selling Wonka. That kind of like inability to socialize properly at points. I think the supporting cast is really good. I think there's a lot of humor in this film as well. Oh, also just the spectacle as well. I meant to say that the spectacle was like insane. Like there's a few magic musical numbers, especially there's one in like a shop, and it's like it's insane, and like there's loads of like stuff going on. It's really enjoyable. I feel like maybe it could have gone a little bit more grandiose, but that's like, you know, I can see why maybe not, because this is kind of meant to be the beginnings of Willy Wonka, so to speak. So yeah, good movie. I don't want to go kind of further than that. I think, you know, sometimes it's okay to just say movie, like, even though I come on here and I say like, oh, you know, you shouldn't just say movie good or movie bad. I think sometimes there are some movies that just are, you know, there's exceptions to every single rule, and I think this is one of those where it's like movie good or movie okay, so to speak, and that's kind of just all I want to say on it, really. Like, apart from, I know I've said a lot more than that, but you know what I mean. I feel like this one doesn't need to be like cut to bits and kind of passed around and kind of shitted out and meted out. Like, I feel like sometimes you can just say, hey, I enjoyed watching this, and that's kind of it. So that was very much this movie. We've got a few other movies coming up as well, which I'm really excited about. Next week, we'll be talking about Rebel Moon, which, of course, was Zack Snyder's kind of pitch of a Star Wars movie that wasn't accepted. So that's going to be very exciting to look at and see how that both contrasts and compares, to a Star Wars movies, but also what kind of, does it reinvigorate the sci-fi franchise in a way? Do we get a new sci-fi franchise out of this, which will be really cool and really exciting in its own way? And then, of course, the week after, Aquaman, which will kind of round out the year alongside some What If as well, because season 2 of What If is coming out at the end of this year. So we still have a lot of movies to kind of, and projects to kind of wrap up the year, even though we're, you know, coming very close to the end of it now, only 20 days left of 2023. But yeah, so with that all said, a very short, very sweet, wink wink, nudge nudge episode, because sometimes that's all you need. Thank you guys as always, and I'll see you later. Bye, guys.